Well, I'll just tell you what I'm hearing from people who I have been talking to, and that is that if her goal was to close the deal, they're not sure she did that. And, you know, some people have asked, is she being held to a different standard? Maybe, but that's maybe the world that she's living in. And on the question of who she is, people are understanding that a little bit more. But what she will do, the question about her legislative priorities, name one, there wasn't one. You know, some more of her personality and her sort of character questions about your weaknesses or what mistakes did you make? Not necessarily the answers there.
All right, folks. So in the last video, we talked about the polling and how all of the current momentum there is strongly trending in Donald Trump's favor. As we take a look at the RCP average of the Trump battlegrounds, the overall spread is that in the combined swing states, Trump is up by almost 1 point. And take a look at this, as the latest polling currently shows, on average from October 24th, Donald Trump is leading by at least some margin in every single battleground state. By the way, keep in mind, he does not need to win every single battleground state to take 270. But yeah, as you can see, this is the trend, right? Trump is not just leading. The gap there is widening. The momentum is on his side. And that's something we talked about, obviously, in the last video. But what really matters, I would say even more, in the biggest indicator is the early vote data, because polls can be wrong, polls can be wildly inaccurate. We certainly have seen that story before, okay? So it's not ridiculous to say, but when it comes to that early voting data, again, this is very bad news for Kamala Harris. We'll tell you about it. But first, folks, do us a big favor. If you enjoy the content, be sure to hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And why should you subscribe? Because doing so goes a long way in ensuring we can keep bringing you these videos. We are just little over a week away from the election, and the top way to support the channel is by hitting that red button. It's totally free and greatly appreciated in advance. Be sure to subscribe. And with that said, I mean, what are we talking about? Okay, well, this is a trend you're seeing almost everywhere, but North Carolina is a state that's in big discussion right now based on their early voting data. So check this out. On the 7th day of their early voting, here are the numbers in 2024. Republicans actually have a lead. Can you believe it? In the early votes, 34.2% to Democrats, 34%. So a 0.2 lead for Republicans in the early voting. You may be asking, what does that actually mean? Well, compare that to this day in history back in 2020. 4 years ago, again, by day 7 of early voting, Democrats had a 14.1 lead. Now Republicans have the outright lead. And when you combine that even with the mail-in and early voting together, this is where it currently stands. Trump, or I should say, forget Trump, but registered Republican voters. That's what we're talking about, because we don't know how people are actually voting, but party affiliation, usually a pretty safe guess, so you can tell, you know, which one. The Republicans, folks, have a actual lead of just over 3,000 on the Democrats, factoring in the mail-in and early voting. Now, guys, if you're new to elections, why is that such a big deal? Well, I did show you the 2020 numbers, but yes, so historically, Democrats always expect to have the lead with the mail-in and early votes because Republicans favor election day. So the general consensus when it comes to these elections is, well, as the Republican candidate, you just want to be not losing by too much before election day, because as a net total, the votes on November 5th are going to swing in your favor. So yes, if the Republicans are outright winning in the early votes or very close to being able to outright win, you can easily assume all of those election day votes that do come out are going to break pretty heavily for Trump, and that guarantees him all of these major battleground states. At least that's the math that we would expect. In Arizona, you're seeing a similar story. Right now, Republicans actually have a lead over the Democrats of 430 331,000 to Democrats 363,000. On this day in history, back in 2020, Democrats led this early voting statistic according to a party affiliation by 122,000 votes. That is big. That is a dramatic shift. And lastly here, I'm just going to mention this because I do live in Florida. It's obviously not a true swing state by any means in this election, but Miami-Dade County has officially flipped Republican, guys, in terms of party affiliation by people who are showing up to vote right now, officially flips Republican in the early and mail-in voting combined for the 2024 election by party affiliation. Again, how big do you want to say a bellwether that Florida or Florida counties necessarily are? I don't know, but it's worth noting that I believe Miami-Dade and also Hillsborough County, that's Tampa Bay area, both like urban areas that usually you would think lean Democrat. They have been trending more right, but hey, even in that early voting, now outright showing or suggesting, I should say at least, a lead for Donald Trump. Take that information as you will. Now again, so what's the summary here? Republicans doing very well in that mail-in and early vote totals. There's a counter argument to all of that, obviously, which is that, yeah, that's true. And yeah, it's probably a good thing. But I think a lot more Republicans are voting early or even by mail in some cases, but mostly early. Hey, look, I have a sign in the back right here, actual mailer from the Trump campaign that says President Trump wants you to vote early, right? This is something that's being encouraged a lot more on our side in comparison to back to 2020 when the whole consensus in our base was, hey, everyone go to show up on election day. So that is definitely true, right? I think more Republicans are just choosing to vote early now. So yes, we should be expecting that our early and mail-in vote totals are doing better than in 2020. In fact, we should be very concerned if they're just similar to 2020, right? And by the way, even in Pennsylvania on the mail-in ballot numbers, Republicans are rapidly even closing the gap there. But at the same time, I think it's important to remember, yes, a lot more Republicans are voting early than ever before, but it's not all of them. Right? There are still a sizable portion of the Republican Trump MAGA base that are going to show up on election day. Is it going to be anywhere close to what it was? Is that election day bump, that boost, going to be nearly as big in raw numbers as 2020? I don't think so. But at the same time, when you're going into it virtually tied, more or less, in some cases, Republicans have a slight lead with early voting in these swing states. And hey, election day, you know, the rest of the Trump base shows up and you consolidate that. That math says that you win. You know, and that's even considering less Republicans voting on election day than in the past, because, hey, you're still going to have Republicans who vote on election day. And there's no reason to expect the Democrats this time around are all waiting on election day to show up to vote then. It's like, no, they're still voting early. They're still voting by mail like they historically were. There's no way to spin it, really, if you're the Democrats. These numbers are very, very bad for you. Simply put, you do not want to have this narrow of a lead, or in some cases be outright losing, right, in states like North Carolina and Arizona going into election day. And that's been the case across the board, right? I see some Democrat election people on Twitter celebrating the fact that they currently have a 350,000 mail-in vote lead right now going in Pennsylvania. But you compare that back to 2020, by election day, guys, they had a 1 million vote lead with that party registration. So the math there doesn't add up, right? Even if you get that by election day to 400,000 or even 500,000, mathematically, is that really going to be enough to cut it? I don't know. Again, it's bad news. And this is probably why the Democrat Party is trying to send out people like Barack Obama to desperately yell at their base, why aren't you voting for us? You got to show up. You got to turn out. But in reality, the enthusiasm is just not there, right?
Because you think that's a sign of strength. Because that's what being a man is. Putting women down. That's not acceptable.
Respectfully, President Obama, what you said is not acceptable. I'm going to say it again. Respectfully, what you said is not acceptable. Not to me, not to a host of black men out there who's not even thinking about voting for Donald Trump. What you said is unacceptable.
Again, they can say whatever they want to say publicly, but we are seeing all of these signs of a fundamentally desperate campaign. Okay, that's why they're sending Barack Obama out there. That's also why they're running with this new thing that Trump is Hitler. Yeah, because we haven't heard that one before. You're watching live people throw basically things at the wall and hoping that they stick. That's exactly what all of this behavior is.
That Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, a retired four-star general, confirmed that while Donald Trump was president, he said he wanted generals like Adolf Hitler had. Donald Trump said that because he does not want a military that is loyal to the United States Constitution. He wants a military that is loyal to him.
No, actually, you are saying that because you are losing in this election, or at least your campaign believes that it is, and you're just trying to find something that will stick. And unfortunately for you, it's not working that well, is it, guys? Okay. With that said, though, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. And by the way, I feel like I say this in almost every video, but I'll say it again. Make sure you vote, okay? That's it by now, all right? Make sure not just you vote, everyone you know, your family, your friends, all of them who support Trump, make sure, hey, follow up with them, right? Did you vote? When are you going to do it? How do you have a plan? Because that's the only thing that I think at this point can lose us this election. It's that complacency, right? It's that attitude that, oh, we got this in the bag, we don't have to do it, or other people are going to save America on my behalf. That's how you overcome all of it. Whether it's the funny business on election night or the fake scandals that they're hoping are going to sway the independent voters or make Republicans switch their vote last minute. That's how you do it, right? Show the machine that you're stronger than them. All you got to do is vote. It's very easy. He took a bullet for us. All you got to do is fill in a bubble for him at this point. So make sure you do that. And until next time, guys, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new. God bless and peace.